I walked out with my coffee and found 3 concrete blocks sealing my driveway shoulder to shoulder, like gray soldiers. A laminated sign flapping on the middle one that read "Community Access." "Do not remove," and the signature at the bottom looked smug in perfect cursive. Paula Vickery, President, Redwood Crossing HOA. By sundown, a bulldozer would be idling in my cul-de-sac, neighbors filming sirens somewhere in the distance, and yeah, that happened. I thought pushing those blocks off my property would end it. Turned out it was just the first brick I had to move. My name is Evan Brooks. I'm not a lawyer or a crusader. I'm a project manager who likes straight lines and quiet weekends. And when my wife Lena stepped beside me whispering, "Tell me this is a prank," I wanted to say yes, but what came out was no. This is theater with clipboards. I called the HOA office and got a recorded voice about administrative review. Then the sheriff and a young deputy named Kyle Mercer walked the line. Looked at the survey pin by my mailbox and said, "They're not on the county road." She's claiming safety might be civil court, which is a polite way to say, go wait in line while your life sits behind a wall. Then Paula made her entrance like a mayor on parade. Beige slacks, badge clipboard, and she sang out "Morning Neighbor Temporary Access Control" while we review traffic flow. And I looked down our dead-end street, 3 houses, and a flickering light, and said, "What traffic?" And she smiled with her teeth and tapped paper like a gavel and said, "We'll see." I did not sleep. I lay there, staring at those blocks in moonlight like tombstones, while my brain did math with time and patience, and by sunrise I'd texted my old buddy Tyler Briggs, who runs Demo Gear, and said, "Need a favor, comes with treads," and he replied address. And an hour later, his flatbed rolled in like a movie reveal. The dozer crawled down the ramps, metal on metal, and the neighborhood poured outside as if the ice cream truck had come for adults. Paula stormed over with Gordon, the treasurer, and Susan, the secretary, and she said, "You cannot bring that vehicle here without HOA approval," and I climbed into the cab and said, "It's not a vehicle, it's a correction. Correction." "For what she snapped your judgment," I said, and the engine roared and the blade kissed. The first block, concrete. Screamed and split, dust rose. Someone whispered, "Whoa, the way you're supposed to at a fireworks show." And when the 3rd block cracked clean, I cut the engine, and Tyler patted my shoulder and said, "Invoice coming." And I made sure Paula heard me say, "Perfect. Thank you." Deputy Mercer rolled back up, looked at the rubble and said, "Technically, you removed an obstruction from your property legally messy, not illegal. Maybe next time, don't pour anything without a permit." Ms. Vickery and I swear the air temperature dropped 10 degrees around her. That night, I heard scraping stepped onto my porch and saw Paula dragging a broken hunk of concrete toward my driveway like a raccoon with a stolen loaf. And I said, "You're trespassing again." And she whispered, "You don't get to win. You made me look ridiculous." And I told her gently, "You did that yourself." And the piece slipped from her hands with a dull thud, and she hissed, "This isn't over," and fishtailed away. By breakfast, the group chat had become a courtroom. Half the neighborhood cheering, half demanding statute numbers. And then Lena handed me her phone with a look that said, "Brace yourself." And there it was, Paula's manifesto about civil action. Bylaws 4A and 6B endangerment, emergency meeting tonight. And endangerment made me choke on toast, because the only thing in danger was arrogance. I made 2 calls, one to Tyler for the full bulldozer footage, one to an HOA attorney. A colleague swore by, Ari Cho, who told me, "Bring ink and dates and calm," and I said I can do calm at least on the outside. That clubhouse looked like election night folding chairs, full neighboring subdivisions, peeking in Paula at the table with a gavel energy she hadn't earned. And when she opened with, "We are here to address vandalism," I said, "Against your ego," and a couple people laughed into their hands, and she barked outbursts, "Will not be tolerated." And I said, "Neither will lies," and plugged in the projector, and the video showed the blade pushing blocks that were clearly on my side. Survey flag steady. Paula charging a running bulldozer with a clipboard like paperwork could stop steel, and the room changed temperature again. Silence that says the story just flipped. And when she sputtered, "This proves nothing," Ari stood up cool as a library and said, "I'm attorney Ari Cho from Mr. Brooks." The barriers were unauthorized and crossed a private boundary. If harassment continues, we'll file for damages and injunctive relief. And under that kind of voice, the board voted to suspend Paula pending investigation, and she slammed the clipboard so hard, the gavel looked nervous. For 2 days, I thought we were done. Then my mail stopped, trash skipped only my address. The common area landscapers began blowing leaves onto my lawn. In formation, an inspector banged on my door at 2 a.m. about an unpermitted shed, and someone spray-painted "liar" on my mailbox, and Lena looked at me with that tight jaw that says this house is supposed to be a refuge, not a battlefield. And she said, "Do something." So I did the only thing that beats performance. I documented photos and timestamps and calls logged. Then I built a timeline, as if it were a project. Date actor, action. Witness outcome. And we printed it like a newsletter and handed it out at a Saturday yard cookout. Because free burgers loosened tongues and stories clicked into place. A $500 fine for Christmas lights. A citation for a garden gnome. Votes that magically happened when dissenters were away. And Ms. Ruth Delgado retired. Paralegal with the softest voice tapped my timeline and said, "The county will give you oversight if you show unlawful board actions. Paper beats posture." Honey, 2 mornings later, a cement truck idled at my curb crew, unloading rebar, a guy saying we're pouring a sidewalk from the curb right across here, pointing across my driveway like he was drawing a no symbol over my life. And when I asked who ordered it, he said some lady from the HOA. And I said, "She's not the HOA anymore." And he shrugged. We pour what we're told. So I called the city inspector, and he walked the pins in the certificate from the recorder's office and said this crosses into private property, and slapped on a stop work order, and watching that slurry sag and get shut down. I finally saw it straight. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. Control leaves paper fingerprints. So I asked Mr. Whitaker, a retired accountant, to look at the HOA ledgers members could access, and he found consulting fees to Northline Landscape Services. No office, a PO. Box, a registered agent who turned out to be Paula's cousin, and when I told Ari she didn't grin, she just said, "That's a lever." And we pulled it by assembling a clean report. Dates and signatures and bank lines. No adjectives, just light. And we delivered 30 sealed copies to doorsteps with a note that said, "Transparency begins here," and our Facebook group went feral with sunlight. A neighbor sent the packet to a reporter, county auditors parked in front of Paula's place and carried boxes out the interim board, removed her entirely, and revoked access. And for the first time in weeks, I slept like a person again. Until my phone buzzed at 3:07 a.m. with a motion alert. The camera showed a crouched figure at the end of my drive. Gloves a plastic jug with a skull on the label, and the steady whisper of someone who's been arguing alone too long. And when I stepped outside with a flashlight, I said, "Paula," and she straightened with eyes like a storm and said, "You don't own this. You never did. This is our land. You poisoned this community." And I said, "Go home." Not a shout, just a line in a human voice, and the patrol car turned into the cul-de-sac. And Deputy Mercer didn't sigh. This time he saw the jug and the footage and said, "Vickery, you're under arrest for criminal mischief and vandalism." And the cuffs clicked, and the red-blue washed over our survey flags like stage lights. And she whispered, "This community is mine." And I said, "Not tonight," and I didn't feel triumph, just a long breath, like a room finally airing out. In the daylight, Ari and I turned over the whole package. Audit timeline, bulldozer video, stop work order, midnight footage. And the county started a review into financial misconduct and misuse of authority. Vendors called us back trash. Returned kids chalked the sidewalks and wrote their names like a Declaration of Independence. And I took that laminated sign and slid it into a file box labeled "Evidence, Not Trophies." If you're waiting for a parade, real life disappoints. What you get is paperwork and a curb line repainted straight, and the quiet realization that bulldozers grab attention. But paper moves systems, and somewhere in there, I learned my own lesson. That a boundary is not a spreadsheet cell. It's a thing you defend when someone writes their name on it and calls it community. And yeah, you know what I mean. A week later, a plain white envelope showed up with no return address and a single line in block letters. "You took what was mine." And we logged it and didn't post it. And I took a slow walk under that flickering streetlight. The same dead-end street, the same shared gravel patch where kids park scooters, and it looked ordinary again. Which is the miracle. And I realized I never wanted to win as much as I wanted to live like a neighbor again. So here's the line where I'll leave you. Was I right to answer concrete with steel, or did I just feed the spectacle? Is brutal clarity the only language that stops petty power? Or did I set a precedent you wouldn't want on your block if you walked out and found your driveway sealed by a laminated signature? What would you do different? Tell me where you draw the line between order and control, between rules and respect. Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me. Share your own neighborhood story. If you've lived under a Paula or accidentally became one, and if this hit a nerve, pass it to someone who needs help finding their boundary and keeping it.